the 3 P's of play-by-play that are consistent with all the sports I cover. And the 3 P's are passion, preparation, and presentation. Okay, and I have to check all 3 boxes for whichever game I'm going to call, whichever sport I'm going to call.
So were you a huge hockey fan?
I was and am. In fact, it's kind of funny. My dad was the public address announcer for the Saskatoon Blades hockey team.
Let's go. Welcome back to Life Beyond the Three, presented by the Center Street Media. I'm Trevanell, your host. Unfortunately, we do not have Dawson Baker. Prayers up to him and his surgery. Hopefully, he can have a speedy recovery for the Cougs. But we have an amazing guest, the voice of the Cougs, Greg Wrubell. Greg, how are you doing?
Trevin, I'm well. We're flipping the script here. I was the guy interviewing you for a lot of years, and now here we are turning the table. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of take what I learned from you over the years and apply it. But let's just jump right into it. It's going to be super easy. Let's talk about kind of like your early life. You're from Canada. So what part of Canada are you from?
I was born in a northern Ontario mining town called Sudbury.
Okay. But
I wasn't there long. As an infant, my family picked up and moved to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Whoa.
That's a province in the middle of Canada. It's a wheat farming province. It's very flat, a lot of agriculture. And Saskatoon was my home from when I was a baby till I was 12, 13. And then right before high school, my dad got a job in Calgary, Alberta. So moved farther west again to Calgary, and I was there for high school years, and then high school led me down to BYU, and I've never really left after I got to Utah. I would go home, for holidays and summers and stuff, but I've been in Utah essentially since I graduated high school and started at BYU as a freshman in 1984. Wow. So all my upbringing was Canada until about 16 years old, and then I've been more or less living down here since.
That's amazing. So my dad, funny story, my dad served in Canada on his mission, served in Alberta, Calgary, and those like that. And then so when I went back to for a USA 3-on-3 tournament, we played in Edmonton.
I saw that.
And so my dad came and he kind of toured his mission and everything.
Very
so it was
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
Big hockey there. So were you a huge hockey fan?
I was and am. In fact, it's kind of funny. My dad was the public address announcer for the Saskatoon Blades hockey team.
Let's go.
So when I lived in Saskatoon, my dad had a regular job, but his side hustle, if you will, was PA announcer, announcer for the arena.
Okay.
For the Saskatoon Blades. That was the hockey team in Saskatoon, and good caliber of hockey, Western Hockey League, junior hockey, but it kind of led right to the NHL. So it was good hockey that came through. And so my dad would take me into his announcer booth. And so I would sit next to him or stand next to him in his announcer booth and watch him do his thing. So cool. I became accustomed at a very early age, really early age, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. I became accustomed to the idea of talking into a mic.
Is that where your kind of love for broadcasting and
that's where I think everything kind of began. Was I realized the power of a mic, the power of a voice, right? My dad would hit the button and talk to an arena full of people. He wasn't talking on the radio or the TV, but he was talking to a hockey crowd.
Yeah.
And it was my dad's voice. It was the coolest thing to hear my dad's voice around the arena. And so many, many, many nights I would be in that booth watching my dad do his job. And of course, you're next to the organist and she'd play songs, and next to them on the other side was the press box where the writers would write, and so I was getting an exposure to the media world, if you will, at a really early age, just by being in the press box at a hockey game. And so my dad was the PA announcer, and I loved watching him do his thing. And then we moved to Calgary, and the big thing there was now I was living in an NHL city because the Flames had just come to town. They moved from Atlanta to Calgary, so now I was in an NHL city, and that was a dream come true. I was in a city with NHL games, and so I would get to games, and that was a thrill to watch the Flames. That was when Gretzky was playing for the Oilers, and so Flames and Oilers, big rivalry. And so I'd see Gretzky play in person. It was awesome. It was great being a hockey fan growing up. And then, you want to go full circle, moving ahead real quickly in this was when the Salt Lake Golden Eagles were playing in Salt Lake City. I was an intern for them first, and then I became their public address announcer.
Wow.
So I would announce for the Golden Eagles at Delta Center.
Yeah.
So I kind of got to do what my dad did. At years later, I was a public address announcer as well as a side gig when I was working at KSL. So I got to do what he did, and I kind of did kind of a full circle moment.
Did you take anything from what your dad did and kind of implement it to like your own style, or is it kind of just got your own style?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had my dad's voice. My dad's voice was awesome, better than mine. I wish I'd had. I got probably some genetics from him vocally, but he had a great voice, really rich baritone, and really all I could take from him was diction and pronunciation, and be slow, clear, concise, and accurate. Those kinds of things I'm sure I took from him, and I hope to do that as a PA announcer and, of course, as a radio announcer as well.
Yeah, I bet he's super proud of you. I mean, the voice of the Cougs is something that I think everybody knows who Greg Wrubell is because of that. So I think it's a super unique thing. It's super cool that your dad did it and you're kind of carrying on the legacy. So now you're in Calgary, get a mission call to Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Yeah, so from Calgary, I graduated high school a little early. I was 16 years old when I graduated high school.
Wow.
So I was able to come down to BYU and get 2 years in before my mission.
Super cool.
So I came down to BYU and got right into broadcasting, like right into it. Like I walked into KBYU
You
TV.
knew right away.
Like day one, I walked in and said, put me to work. Like whatever you have me, like if there's something to do, let me do it.
And that stemmed from your dad? Or is it just...
This was more deciding that I wanted to be a broadcaster.
Okay.
Right? And so in high school, I did things like I was in drama, choir, public speaking, singing. I was doing things that would put me in front of a mic or behind a mic and in front of a crowd. Out
of your comfort zone and everything.
Yeah. So I in high school, I was doing things that would help me get past things like stage fright or nervousness. So I was doing a lot of things like that put me kind of out in front, right, in the public. So that was a step. The other step was learning about broadcasting. I knew who I liked, and I watched and listened to a lot of TV and a lot of radio, baseball, hockey, whatever. I loved it. I would write letters to broadcasters in Calgary and say, I'm a high school student, love to come take a tour, do those kinds of things. So I was always trying to get, a sense of what it was like to be a broadcaster. So when I got to BYU, by the way, I didn't know much about BYU at all. We were converts to the church in Canada. And my high school friends in Calgary were applying for BYU, and so I did the same thing, got in, and so came down. And again, from day one, I walked in and said, kind of put me to work, right? And so I got 2 years before my mission because I was younger. I got to, my freshman and sophomore year done, did a lot of different things, from writing, producing, anchoring, news, weather, sports, just all manners of the profession. Then mission call to Sao Paulo, Brazil. I served in Sao Paulo North for 2 years. Came home. When I got back, I got right back into broadcasting. I went right back to my old haunt and said, "I'm back. What do you have for me?" And so I got right back into it. And then when I was a junior at BYU, so my third year, first year post mission, there was an internship for KSL Radio in Salt Lake City for a sports internship, right up my alley, right? So I applied for it, got it, and that kind of set me on the path. That's where I met people that kind of changed my life in terms of professional opportunities. There's a gentleman named Chris Tunis, and I'm not sure anybody of the current generation would know who Chris is, but in my day, just out of high school and out of college or in college, Chris was kind of a sports talk radio pioneer in Utah, working at KSL, which is then and now the place you want to kind of be if you're in Salt Lake media, right? And so I got to work with Chris, who was the studio host for the BYU football and basketball broadcasts, had a nightly talk show on KSL, and he was kind of a pioneer of sports talk when it wasn't really a genre yet. There wasn't a lot of sports talk nationally at all, but he was kind of doing it. So I got to learn from him how to be, more of a sportscaster. And it ended, the internship ended. I went home to Calgary. It was now summertime. This was a spring internship. Went home in the summer. At the end of the summer, got married. My wife and I started, I was starting my senior year, I guess it would be, at BYU. She had just graduated, and we both ended up getting jobs within weeks of each other at KSL because they hired me. So after the internship, they got back with me and said, "We have a part-time job on the weekends as a news reporter and anchor. Would you have interest?" And I wanted to be a sportscaster, right? But this was a news opening. But I said, I better do this. I could have held, if you hold out too long and you wait for the perfect opportunity, may never arise, right? So I took this news job. And then within a few weeks or even days, my wife got offered a job with TV, KSL TV. So we were both working there together at the same time. And that kind of put me in the door at KSL. I was now an employee, and KSL, of course, had the broadcast rights to BYU.
Yep.
And within a couple of years, the guy who was doing sidelines for the football games quit. There was an opening. I got that job, and that was really what put me on the BYU path, because now I was on Paul James's football radio broadcast crew as his sideline reporter. And so his partner was Mark Lyons, who, by the way, I just talked to today. Mark came by BYU TV today. We were talking for a good half hour today. So Paul James was the partner with Mark Lyons. I was the third wheel, the sideline guy. And I did that for 9 years with PJ until he quit football. And then I got the play-by-play gig after those 9 years. But in the midst of those 9 years, he stopped doing basketball. And that's when I got the basketball gig.
Wow.
That was in 1996, 97, 97, 98. Yeah. So this is my 30th year calling basketball games. But it all started midway through those 9 years of sidelines for football. When there was an opening, I got that. And so then when Paul quit football, a few years later, I'd already had a few years doing basketball. I was more of a natural choice at that point. And I kind of slid in and began doing both, and kind of the rest is history.
How was the sideline kind of gig?
Loved it. It was the best. And it was great training because during those 9 years, I got to, walk the field for every game as the sideline reporter for Paul. And I got to hear him in my headset. I got to follow everything I was doing with him providing kind of the commentary for what I was watching. And so I learned how to do play-by-play by listening to him do play-by-play, basically.
Wow.
That was my training.
Yeah.
I didn't have practice at lower levels or anything. So ultimately, in 1996, he had some heart issues that put him on the shelf for about 6 weeks. He had to recover from some heart surgery. And during those 6 weeks, I was the fill-in. So during those 6 weeks, this was now November. This is December of 1996, and Paul was recovering from heart surgery, and it was during those weeks that he was recovering that they threw me into the mix. I got to do a football game, the 1996 WAC championship game in Las Vegas between BYU and Wyoming.
Crazy.
That was my first ever football game I'd ever called.
How was that?
Fear-inducing and nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
I'd never called a football. I'd never called anything really. Before that. Like basketball games, they sent me on Paul had heart surgery on a Saturday. Tuesday there was a game at Washington in Seattle, BYU in Washington, and I was on a plane to call that game. I'd never called anything of any kind, and here I was calling a play-by-play for BYU basketball, and then that football game, and then more basketball games as Paul was recovering, and I was learning on the fly, like literally learning on the fly. I'd never had any practice other than hearing kind of Paul do the job.
Yeah. Would you re-listen to yourself after games?
I had to, and I still do.
Okay, maybe I should do this.
And better. I still do. No, that's what you do all the time.
It's like a little film session.
How you get better, right? I mean, how do you get better unless you see where you're kind of going wrong or can fine tune things? But certainly back then, I was listening to everything I did. How can I get better? How can I get better? But those early days were as a fill-in. So I'm just trying to keep the seat warm until Paul gets back. Gotcha. And then Paul came back for the Cotton Bowl of 1997, New Year's Day. That was his first game back. And then he and I split hoops the rest of that year. Then at the end of that season, he quit basketball altogether, stayed with football, but now basketball was open, and that's when Mark Durant and I started together. So we're in our 29th year together. I have one more year because I was by myself or with other guys before Mark, that one season where Paul was dealing with some health issues. But so we're in our 29th year together. I'm in my 30th with basketball. And in football, it's now my 25th season of play-by-play, but having had those 9 years of sidelines before that. So that's kind of like the timeline of what got me to where we are. But people ask me, students often, how do I get to do what you do? And I wish there was a perfect answer. But, if Paul doesn't have that heart issue, does this even happen? Because think about it. Let's say he stays healthy. Nothing happens. He's healthy and retires with Wrubell because Paul and Wrubell went out together. Okay. Let's say that Paul and Wrubell both retire in 2000 and Paul was in good health, let's say, never had the issues. Well, at that point, KSL has to find a play-by-play broadcaster to replace the great Paul James. And I would have had no reps. Right? So they probably put out a national search and see who's got a good tape and who's the guy. I probably wouldn't have been the guy. I might have wanted to be the guy. I might have hoped. All I would have had, though, was those 9 years of sideline reporting. No play-by-play experience at all. So the way it turned out, I actually had a play-by-play resume now. And I made more sense at that point. But if they were just going cold and Paul had quit without me getting any reps, I'm probably not sitting here with you today.
It's crazy. So, imagine Greg, the voice of the Cougs, not the voice of the Cougs anymore.
A door had to open, and it opened in a weird way.
That's crazy.
And so you walk in, and hopefully you do well enough where they think you've got some potential, and they did, and kept me, on board, and I was able to learn and grow until Paul was ready to retire from football, and then they handed me that job too, and hopefully by then I was kind of ready for everything, and I think I was, and hopefully I've made Cougar Nation happy with how I've done the job, but it might not have ever been my job if Paul hadn't had that health issue that required a fill-in, and I just happened to be that fill-in.
Yeah. So how different is calling a football game compared to a basketball game in terms of like? Yes, like the whole sport's completely different, right? But like your mentality going into it, is it the exact same? Is like how does that differ?
Yeah, there are certain things that hold true for all the sports I cover, whether it's football, men's basketball, baseball, women's soccer. So I do 3 sports on the radio: the football, the basketball, and the baseball, and then I do soccer on TV for ESPN Plus. So I have 4 sports I do. And I have what I call the 3 P's of play-by-play that are consistent with all the sports I cover. And the 3 P's are passion, preparation, and presentation. Okay? And I have to check all 3 boxes for whichever game I'm going to call, whichever sport I'm going to call. And I have, it starts with passion. You have to have a love for the craft, a love for the school, love for the team, whatever it is. You have to have something that comes out of your heart that says, I'm excited to be there. I want to be there. I'm happy to be there. This is what I enjoy doing. I'm happy to talk to the audience. This is what I love. So that's the passion part. The preparation part is the same no matter what sport I'm calling. I mean, you've seen I do spotting boards for football.
Let's go into this real quick, because that's a big question, because I actually want to know, and I think everybody wants to know, like the amount of time you prepare for an event like a sport. All your sports, right? But like, let's say for this game tomorrow for BYU, they're playing. What is your preparation going into it? So name exactly everything.
You take the length of a broadcast, and you take that length of a broadcast by hours, and you multiply that by 3 or 4, and that's about the amount of prep time it will take to get ready for the broadcast. So roughly a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio, I think, is a good ratio of prep time to actual on-air time. And my on-air prep, no matter what the sport, involves stat research, video preparation, watching games and or practices, in person or on video, creation of your spotting boards, writing of your pregame script, memorization. Those are all consistent. Like I go into every game, whether it's football or basketball, I've memorized the players' names and numbers. Of course, the BYU names and numbers I've long ago memorized, right? Before the season, that's locked in. But every game, you're changing an opponent. So I'm always memorizing names and numbers to make sure when I look at the field or the court, I'm not looking at a number and going, oh man, who is that? And then looking down at my spotting board, I want to see a number and say a name. See a number, say a name. So the memorization part's a big part of it. And you use your spotting boards to help with the memorization. On my spotting boards, you've seen them. They vary a little bit in terms of format by the sport, but it's the basics. It's names, it's numbers, it's heights, it's weights, it's hometowns, it's stats, it's records, it's career highs, it's season highs, all these things. So I have access to that information without having to leaf through papers. So spotting board creation is a big thing. Every play-by-play person has his or her own way of doing it. I've had a system that I've worked with and for a number of years that kind of works for me, but everyone's got their own system. And so you go with what works best for you. But I use those spotting boards to help with the memorization and then to help with in-game information kind of recall. Pre-game scripts are a big thing for me. I write out word for word my pre-games. Now, I could do them ad lib. I could off the cuff a pre-game anytime, of course. Because basically when you get to play-by-play, the whole thing is off the cuff. The whole thing is ad lib. But when I can prepare something, I want to prepare something. Meaning in that half hour before a tip, Mark and I are together, or 35 to 40 minutes before a football game, Hans and I are together. I want that to be a scripted, really well-prepared presentation for the audience as they're driving into the stadium or listening at home, wherever the case may be. I want to have certain things I want to address in a certain manner, in a certain sequence. I want to make sure my color person knows where they're going to fit in. I leave spaces for them kind of in the script to kind of fill in however they want to. It helps with timing of breaks and commercials. And I basically, my script is important to me. So literally every game I've called, going back 30 years, has a script. at least for the pregame. And literally, it's word for word. I'll write it out.
Do you keep all your scripts?
I keep my scripts.
I was going
keep
to say,
my boards.
that's such a cool,
I don't know why I do.
No, it's so cool.
And a lot of it's digital, right? I keep it digitally. Yeah. But yeah, I just got years and years and years of.
It'd be so cool to go back
and so I do go. I like and the spotting boards I have hard copies of, and I'll sometimes go to a spotting board 20 years ago and see the names and remember that night kind of thing. Yeah. So I keep a lot of stuff. But the script I think is an important thing for me because I can now use I can use craftsmanship. You can craft a script. You can use English the right way. You can be stylish. You can do certain things. And so I think it's important. So I write it out word for word because I'm writing the way I speak the way I write, and I write the way I think. And so when it comes time to deliver it, it's going to sound like a conversation because it's how I would talk. Yeah. Because these are my thoughts, and I just simply put them onto paper. But if I'm delivering it right, it's not going to sound hopefully like I'm reading a script word for word from it'll sound like a conversation, but it has a direction to it. That's the big part of my preparation as well. One of those tools that I use to kind of get ready for a game is the scripting. And so you throw all these things together. There's tons of stat research, a lot of numbers, and anyone who follows me on social media on X, they'll see that they get a lot of trivia and a lot of stats during the week. Well, basically, these are the things I'm finding as I research for the game. And so a lot of my game research ends up going on to social because I'm like, oh, that's a fun tidbit. I'll share it with the audience. Yeah. I'll research some more. Well, that's a cool thing. I'll share that with the audience. And so they're getting a lot of what's going to go into my game prep as well.
That's super cool. How much do you think, obviously it's changed a lot, but like from when you started with technology, everything to now, like how is that different in terms of your preparation?
My spotting boards in the old days, I had numerous multicolored Sharpies and I was Sharpieing it was time consuming because it was all handwritten. It wasn't until I was years into broadcasting that laptops came about and I was able to use a program to either get Excel or Publisher and start working on different things. Everything was handwritten. So I was hand doing boards for a long time. And my scripts were a legal pad writing it out as well. So laptops were a lifesaver for me. I take a printer with me on the road. On all my road trips, I pack a printer because my hotel room becomes an office when I'm on the road because I'm printing up spotting boards, I'm printing up scripts. And so technology has been a huge thing for me. I'm still not the guy that I still need printed paper. I still go into the booth with folders and folders and folders of paper. I don't want to be leafing through stuff on laptops or iPads to try and find information. I need it at my fingertips because in a typical football game or basketball game, my laptop or my iPad becomes a stat monitor. You can access programs that let you see the stats as they're coming up in the course of a game on your monitor. So my laptop and my iPad are busy during the game as stat monitors, basically. And then during a halftime or a post game, I can get the laptop and throw a post out on X or whatever. But those are active screens for me. They can't be used for information. I need to have a lot of information at my fingertips. So I print a lot of stuff. I've killed so many trees over the years, just me personally, because of how much paper I tend to use in the course of a week.
That's amazing. Do you?
And I'm throwing all kinds of details that
I love it. I think the audience
no one cares about, but that's how I get ready. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the unique thing too is that you travel, right? You travel to every game. How is that in terms? Because I know my wife sometimes gets mad at me. It's like you're always gone. How is it traveling? Because do you travel for football?
Football, basketball, baseball, soccer. My trips are more scattered, usually just to provide complimentary coverage with social media and stuff. Home games, I call play-by-play. Road games, it's hit and miss with soccer. Gotcha. I used to call soccer on the radio too, which I was traveling for every game. But now a little more hit and miss for the travel for soccer. But the point being, I do travel with all those sports. Yeah.
So how is that in terms of family? How do you make that work out, as well as how is your relationship with individual players? Because our relationship was really good and it was nice because it makes it honestly easier to interview, right? When you're there, when you know them a little bit, you're around them. Yeah, you're on the plane with us. We're kind of joking here and there at dinner, and then you go onto the court. XYZ happens. You're able to interview after, and it's just more of a conversation than being interviewed. If that makes sense. So.
From a family standpoint, it's a good thing that my wife was also in broadcasting. So we both kind of knew the deal.
It. That's
right.
Awesome. And
so we kind of made a commitment early, like this. If this is going to be the life, this is how it's going to have to work. And so fortunately, we've been able to make this whole thing work on one income. When we had our first daughter, she left broadcasting. She left KSL TV. We had our first daughter, and that's how we chose to roll. And so she's been the biggest part of my success, because she has been able to devote, all of her time to our home life and our kids. While I do a lot of travel. Of course, when you're home, you want it to matter, and I think my kids, had a good upbringing with their dad, but mom was, kind of the rock and the anchor of the home, allowing me to do what I'm required to do my job properly. So that was the decision we made, early on. Let's try and make this roll on one income, see if we can make it work, and go that route. And you kind of make it work. Early on, especially. You're just into a house. You've got your mortgage, and you get into the house on two incomes. You got the mortgage on two incomes, and then suddenly you have a family started, and you're like, well, let's drop down to one and see how it goes.
Stress happening a little bit.
Yeah, but you have faith and that it'll all work out, and eventually it does. I think that was an important part of it for us. This is just our situation, but we said let's try and make it work this way, and I think it wouldn't have worked with as much as I'm gone any other way. And so that was huge on her part, remains huge on her part, because she loved the business too. She was a broadcaster. Yeah. So that's kind of how it went for us. Then on the other side, yes, being around the players is great. I think it's interesting. As we've gotten, more toward the NIL era, the portal era, it's a little different. Guys like you or Richie, who kind of come and stay, they might be rarer, they might be less frequent going. And so you might not have as deep a relationship with the player because they might just be with you for a year, maybe two, then something else comes up or they have another opportunity. And so I think people like yourself, and I'll use Richie because he's a current example. He's been a BYU lifer, right?
4 years.
I'm not sure how many of those guys we're going to see, where a senior night means, wow, we saw them for 4 or 5 years straight. So that's part of it, because the longer you get to know somebody, the better the relationship and the more easy the conversations come. So maybe we adjust a little bit to that. It's more, kind of good to know you while you're here, and then we expect to see you gone pretty soon. That's a little bit different.
True.
But I do like being around the guys. Football, we don't go on their charter because our timetable for football is different. We're on the air much longer after games than football would need. They kind of hit the airport, and we're still on the air forever. Basketball, I'm able to hit the airport immediately with the guys. So basketball travel is with the guys. Baseball travels with the guys. Soccer travels with the team. Football is a little different. That's the one sport that's different, but it's good being around those other sports, again, on the plane, on the bus, in the meals when you can, so you kind of foster those relationships.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there a sport that you like calling more than the other sports?
I'm absolutely truthful when I say this. Whichever sport I'm calling is my favorite at that time.
That's fair. I thought you were going to say that.
It really is, but it really is though, because you're in the moment. And so I can find great things and unique things and enjoyable things about all the different sports that make them special.
That's fair.
Football has this kind of epic once a week build up. Every game's so huge. You only play 12, 13 times. Like, so much goes into it. It's this 8-hour broadcast that it's just so big every week. It's got its own, feel. Basketball, the pace of the schedule is quicker. The pace of the game is quicker. It's a more rat-a-tat type delivery than football. Football, I kind of go, I say my thing, and then it's hands for 10, 15 seconds. I say my thing, then it's hands for a few. And with basketball, it's more end to end to end to end. Oh, we got a foul, Mark can talk. Or we have some free throws, Mark can talk. It's a little different vibe in basketball. And then, soccer is a different thing altogether. Much more space, more dead time, more neutral time. You're feeling more information, kind of letting action unfold in front of you without the urgency maybe. And then baseball is the one I'm probably enjoying the most currently because I have the most to learn with that one. I've called it for the fewest amount of years, the least amount of years. And so every rep I get in baseball is really important for me because it helps me grow as quickly as possible. I love baseball games, especially when if I'm faced with the challenge of calling it by myself. I love Tuckett Slade when he's my broadcast partner because Tuckett brings so much background and info to the broadcast. But when I'm left to my own devices, I have to work so much harder to fill those spaces in a baseball broadcast and make it interesting. And yet there's so much going on. People talk about how peaceful and calm baseball is, and yet my head's like there's so much spinning in my head. There's so much to think about
different rules.
With every different pitch. Like there's a lot going on. So it's a really good challenge for me right now. I enjoy that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there an athlete? Let's go first basketball, just because basketball, right? Is there an athlete on the team right now that's like you have a funny interaction with or a funny story, they're like different on the road than people would expect the audience would kind of like to know?
Oh, God, because
like Richie's a whole different person compared on the court in terms of like who he is, just a day-to-day person.
Very smooth and very chill, very laid back, and then an absolute, just bulldog on the court, right? So everyone kind of knows that about him. Because the team is so new, really, like you're getting to learn a lot about these guys kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
It was fun that when my daughter she's on a mission right now in Chile, but she was working in athletics the last couple of years and kind of around the program a little bit too. So she'd have her favorites. And so I always like the interactions that I can have with the players where I get to tell them how much my daughter likes them, and whether it was Diego or Mihailo currently. So they be in her classes, like for example. So you see them in the class, kind of thing. So I've always liked that when I've been able to kind of have like a little family connection with a player that way.
Yeah.
I enjoy those moments. But you bring up Rich is a good example of somebody who, off the court, really mild-mannered, and then on the court, just absolute tenacious, right?
Exactly.
But a lot of these guys I'm still getting to know. Like Rob and AJ. AJ's got so much going on. I don't know how close you're really going to get to AJ in the course of a year. Other than we had a great post-game interview with him the other night though. In Orlando, it was our first chance to actually interview him in a post-game. That was actually good. I thought that was as much as I've talked to him at all. Was actually on the interview. He has so much going on. But it's a unique group, and I'm looking forward to getting to know him. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, let's lighten the load a little bit. We're going to go into some fun memories, okay, to finish this off. So you've called over 800 games.
I'm not even sure what the number is.
It's an insane amount.
If you combine all the sports, it's well in the thousands something. Yeah,
just
it's
insane amount. So if you could remember, what is the most memorable football game that you've called?
Well, I've been saying this for a while because it's held true for a while. That 2006 BYU Utah game with Beck to Harline, that was kind of like the first kind of moment that stuck in people's minds, I think, with me. And it was a great moment, right? It's zeros on the clock, your rival. It's a game-winning touchdown with no time left. It's tough to top that. So, and the overall game was great. I mean, it was an amazing game, back and forth, high scoring, incredible amount of tension in the way it ended. So Beck to Harline, the 2006 game, it's pretty tough to top.
Yeah.
There've been great moments since. I mean, I've called, a Hail Mary at Nebraska.
I was going to say, the Hail Mary in Nebraska was insane.
Right.
That's
so that's right up there. So that's in the team picture of great memories for sure. The week later, we came back and beat Boise, and my current sideline reporter, Mitchell Juergens, was the wide receiver that caught the pass from Tanner Mangum in the end zone, kind of a mini Hail Mary the next week. That was really cool. Most bowl games are fun, but the current era with the playoff, that's where the postseason's really going to take on, a different feel. So
true.
This weekend coming up, we're recording this right before the Big 12 title game. It's my first, playoff game or postseason game that really matters, right? One that could lead to something. Bowl games are great, but usually they're just bowl games.
Yeah.
This one is a game that for BYU is basically a play-in game. I hope that the committee gives them respect their due, and even with a loss puts them in the playoff, but I can't count on that. The only thing I can count on right now is a win and you're in situation. So in a way, the playoffs begin now for BYU. So games like this, I've never called a game like this.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a bucket list thing, was to get to a situation where you're calling, playoff football. And that's a cool thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think it's so unique that college football is doing that, and I think it's so fun. It's kind of like the March Madness, right?
And March Madness, that to me has always been the highlight of every athletic year, because nothing beats the tension and the chance of reaching something special that happens in February into March. It might be easier, quote unquote, now that you're in the Big 12 and you're in a league with more bids. But for a long time, BYU was in these leagues where it's 1, 2, maybe 3 tops. You kind of had to be right near the top to have a shot. And even just getting into the tournament felt like such a massive, massive win. Yeah. Right? It's so hard to do. And even if they expand it to 72 teams, it's still going to be hard to do.
Yeah.
It's a small percentage of teams that get to play in that. And so just reaching that has always been such a massive thing. I still believe, once you get to that NCAA tournament site, there's a whole different level of excitement and accomplishment. It is, the press conferences look different. They feel different. Everything's just different and bigger. That's never gotten old for me, ever.
Yeah.
And hopefully now with Coach Young and the group we've got and groups we'll have, it'll be a more regular thing, and the runs can get deeper. But nothing beats the tournament. Nothing beats advancing in the tournament, and nothing beats getting to the second weekend. I don't know beyond that yet, but the second weekend, that is so huge.
It is amazing feeling playing against Alabama. It was nice to lose that way, just because like it's not like they shot amazing.
They would have beaten every team in the field that night.
And it just wasn't.
But second weekends are special, man. When you get out of that first venue, we won. We got 2 games in Denver.
We got chills right now.
We won Denver. Yeah. We're going somewhere else. Somewhere else, and it's the coolest thing.
It's the coolest thing.
It is.
Okay, so talking about basketball, what is your most memorable basketball game? One off the top of your head.
Oh man, I so easily revert back to Jimmer Mania because that was such a crazy year, and the game he had against New Mexico when he scored, when he set the scoring record was 52 against New Mexico in Vegas. That's kind of like an all-timer moment. Danny Ainge was there and he passed Danny Ainge. It was all kinds of things going on in that game. His half-court shot game against Utah and Salt Lake City.
So cool.
And then beating Gonzaga. To get to the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And that feeling like this team's going to do something. I mean, it would have been nice if we had a full team. We didn't. Jimmer was having to pull a larger load. But just that run was so memorable and kind of the national fever that was caught up with it. Kind of tough to compare.
Yeah.
But yet just this past year, the games that BYU won in Tucson against Arizona, Iowa State at Hilton.
Yeah.
I mean, those are like maybe 2 of the most all-time road game experiences I've ever had, and they came really close to each other.
I know.
I mean, in my entire career, those were such great environments to win those games. And then even the game against Iowa State and Kansas City was epic. So I'm maybe looking at really, really recent memories because they're so close to me, but those are some of the most entertaining, fun games I've ever called. If you want to go back really far, it's kind of funny. In 1997, Mark and I first year together, they had to. So this was a Steve Cleveland. So I think they were 9-21 that year. They didn't play in the postseason, but they got to the WAC tournament. But just to get to the WAC tournament, they had to go on the road, final weekend of the season, and beat New Mexico and UTEP, which were good basketball teams at the time. New Mexico was on a 44-game home court win streak, I think.
Wow.
This is a game BYU is not going to win because BYU was a 7-win team going into the weekend. And keep in mind, the year before, my first year calling games, they were 1-25. So they were coming off the 1-25 season. Steve Cleveland's hired. This is his first year with Coach Cleve, Coach Rose. They're just building this thing. And again, a victory for BYU would be just to get to the WAC tournament in Vegas because not every team qualified for it. There were teams that did not qualify. And so for BYU to qualify, they had to go on the road with a 7-win team. They were 7-20.
Wow.
Right? They had to go end a 44-game home court win streak, I think, and then win at UTEP as well. Well, they went into New Mexico, and it wasn't even a game. Just we killed New Mexico. It was unbelievable. And that was to me the most that's still that was an amazing moment for me at that time. And then they had to go to UTEP and triple overtime, I believe they won that game just to get to Vegas. And they lost in Vegas, but it was a step.
A step in the right direction.
And it was the first year off of 1-25. And I felt so grateful to be part of that team.
Yeah.
And so I still think that was a memorable set of games, experiences because nobody gave us a shot in Albuquerque. No way were they going to win. And they won and kind of won going away.
Wow.
And then to win in overtime the way they triple overtime the way they did, it felt pretty cool.
Yeah.
Again, it was a step back from the abyss, we're on our way. And that's why what made it so special was 3 years later, 2000-2001 team, we made it back to the NCAA tournament in San Diego against Cincinnati for the first time since the 1-25 year. Yeah. So that was when it kind of came around. We got to see the step because the first year it was get to the WAC tournament. Then it was a couple of NITs. Then it was the NCAA tournament, and they were back.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was pretty cool early in my career to kind of see a full circle progression.
Yeah.
And of course, since then, that's 20 more plus years. So many amazing games, but the ones that came to mind, I just threw at you just from last year, which shows how cool this job is because I can go year to year and something great's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish the whole audience watching could be in this situation to feel the passion that Greg has for all the sports he calls. It's you have chills, right? It's so cool just talking to you about it.
It's the best.
Some of my cool memories were my freshman year at Houston. TJ makes a shot.
So
we run up to you.
That's a great game. That's a great game.
We're all like,
but I wasn't me.
I
had a soccer playoff game that night. I was doing soccer. Mark was there.
Mark got the hug
from TJ. But that wasn't a game I got to call. So I got to celebrate it.
That's fair.
But as a listener, as a viewer, I didn't get a chance to experience the moment. But it's a great moment.
And then there's two moments for me with you. That was my freshman year, first game ever. It was our exhibition game. I shot the ball really, really well. And I remember my whole family taking pictures of me, like doing the interview with you.
Oh, we got post game with you. Yes.
So funny. And then the other one was in Tucson against Arizona. That game was
just this past year.
Yes, that was amazing,
unbelievable.
Just the energy in the building, the energy with us talking. It was super, super cool.
Yeah, no, that's an all timer.
It is up there, probably number one. Honestly, just insane.
Yeah.
But last thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about was your relationship with Mark Durant. So you guys have been together for 20 plus years.
29th year. Yeah.
Almost 30. Like, how has your relationship grown? How is Mark, and how is it to like be able to bounce ideas off each other and just I feel like the camaraderie with you.
I think we're a great fit. A really good balance because I'm kind of like, the high energy, intense guy, and Mark is kind of the more, laid back, great commentary, great content, but kind of the antithesis to my kind of frenetic approach. Mm-hmm. His is more kind of clever wisdom. He'll kind of piece it in there. It's a really good fit, I think, and it's kind of funny. I got to know Mark by listening to Mark. I was working at KSL in the mid-'90s when Mark was playing for BYU, and I would do a lot of studio work during basketball broadcasts. And he would come on and do a lot of post-game interviews with Paul James. Paul loved Mark as an interview because he was a great talker, right? So Mark would come on to do these interviews. And so I got a sense that, wow, Mark's really comfortable on the air for a player. Like, for a player, he's like really good at talking on the air. And so I kind of filed that away, And then when it came time, when they gave me the full-time basketball gig for play-by-play and said, who are you going to work with? Mark says I called a few different people to kind of feel some things out, but the only guy I ever met with or sat down with was Mark. Mm-hmm. And I don't recall calling a lot of people at all before I got to Mark. But I set up a lunch date with Mark in downtown Salt Lake. We had a lunch, and the minute I sat down with him, I'm like, that's my guy.
Yeah, it's over.
And so, it was like one conversation, I got my guy. Mm-hmm. And he's tolerated me for 29 years. And again, a perfect balance to me. He has great memories of his childhood that involved BYU basketball that he brings to our broadcast. And so really, it stretches back decades where we can take listeners, when we do a game together. And the cool thing too is his dad is George Durant. Mm-hmm. George was my MTC president.
Wow.
So when I went to the MTC.
Full circle moment.
I went to the MTC, first day, my parents dropped me off. They take off. I'm there. They put you in the meeting, your first meeting to meet the mission president, which is the MTC president. And who does he ask to give the opening prayer? Me. So George Durant asked Greg Wrubell to give an opening prayer on his first day in the mission field, basically. Mm-hmm. And I got to know and love George in those 2 months I was there. And then, and I knew the Durant name. Yeah. I knew Devin was a basketball player, and Mark was kind of, up and coming as a high schooler, but would be a player soon for BYU. And then I got to work with George's. So I was a George Durant and a Durant family fan before I was a Mark fan. Yeah. But then I got to work with Mark, and I'd already had the George connection. And sense. It's just he's I don't have a really wide circle of friends. It's actually pretty narrow and pretty tight, and Mark's right there. Super cool. I've known very few people longer than I've known Mark Durant. And we're together a lot in the course of the season. Mm-hmm. And again, I say tolerate. I think, he's the right guy to work with me. Mm-hmm. I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I work for him, and he works for me. Exactly. And he works for our listeners, our audience. I mean, they love Mark. They love Mark. And his social media game is so on point. Like his X account is such a great follow. You laugh every day with Mark Durant, and you also get inspiration from Mark Durant. Yeah. He's the best possible partner I could ever hope to have. And I hope I'm not going to say we're going to go another 29 years because that's not going to happen, but another few at least, I'd love to go with him. He's the best partner and best friend I could have. Yeah, that's awesome. I love Mark. I remember doing a couple like missionary-esque, speaking engagements with him. And so it's been super cool to get to know him on that level of, faith, and then be able to get to know him on the competitive basketball, go type of mind and world as well. Mm-hmm.
The last question, kind of to finish off this podcast, is how do you hope people remember like Greg Wrubell, the legacy of Greg Wrubell?
Oh gosh, that's a. I'm still going. I'm still going. I just hope that listeners will think that when they heard me call a game, that they were hearing somebody who loved BYU sports as much as them, and that cared as much as them, and that wanted to win as much as they did, and that it came through, and that he cared enough to prepare enough to give interesting information, hopefully give it in an entertaining format, and that he put his whole heart and energy into every broadcast, and that hopefully that came through to whoever's tuning in. If they were syncing up and watching the TV and turning down the sound and turning us up, or driving across the country and hearing us just with no other input at all, however they were tuning to us, if it was an iPhone, watching their kid's soccer game, or AirPods on an airplane, however we were coming through to them, that we had a moment together, that we felt that we were in it together, that Greg gets us, Greg understands what we want and what we're going through, and how much we're loving this moment because he's loving it too. So I guess I would just want that sense of connection, that we're kind of in this together, and we all relate to each other.
I love that. Well, Greg, appreciate you. Voice of the Cougars, everybody. Thank you for hopping on the podcast.
Trevin, what a pleasure. We missed Doss and wish him the best, of course. But, I still remember, finding out that you were not going to be a Cal Bear, that you were going to be a BYU Cougar. And from that very first day, Trevin was on my radar. And then I got to follow you for a long career and a great career. And to still have this relationship now is awesome and great, and a good embodiment of what this is all about. These are the enjoyable times to have someone to be able to chronicle their career and then continue a relationship and have this experience. Yeah,
exactly.
It's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for hopping on.
You bet.
Big games this week, so let's go. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.